Hello, welcome to the Toon Under podcast. The season is back, the real season, the proper football, never mind that international Euros nonsense and pre-season. We're through all that now, back to the proper stuff. It's felt like it's been a long time since May, and it always does feel like that. It drags on and on. But we're back, Newcastle back with a very, very important, very hard-fought victory over newly promoted Southampton. It was a massive performance. Marc is joining me tonight to talk through this. Marc, how good is it to have Newcastle back? And how do you reflect on this game overall as well? A lot to talk about.
Oh, there's a load that we're going to go through, I'm sure. It's kind of equal parts frustration and relief and celebrations after that sort of a game. But look, I mean, it's been a drought. There's been no football of note to get behind for a while. Apologies in advance for my screen keep locking, but look. It's been nice catching up on a bit of sleep during the off season. I'm not going to lie, but nothing can come close to that nighttime rush of waiting to tune into the Newcastle games.
What was your strategy last night? Because I decided to go to sleep I got to sleep at about 9:15, actually, just before the Liverpool game, which I was quite pleased about. And then I, as I always do when Newcastle are playing, I was waking up every half hour or so, but at least I got some sleep before. And then got to sleep at about 2:30 afterwards as well. So obviously the adrenaline's kicking in at the end there, but still managed. So I feel actually all right. It was quite a successful midnight match for me. What was your strategy?
I just powered through. I have this inbuilt alarm clock where even if I am super tired, I'm not intending on watching the game at all. Even the preseason friendlies, I was up, right, I'm going to go to bed. I'm not going to bother with this on. And then like 10 minutes before kickoff, I'm just ping awake in bed. I'm like, oh, I may as well get up and watch it now. So yeah, I don't tend to have an issue. My brain just won't let me sleep and miss a kickoff. So which is quite good. But no, powered through last night. So by the end of it at 2 a.m., I was flagging a bit. I'm not going to lie. Especially after what was a pretty draining second half to try and watch.
Yeah, it wasn't the most stress-free game ever that we've ever watched, was it? It was pretty stressful, actually. But yeah. I was thinking as well, the comparison with the opening game of last season, which was that swashbuckling 5-1 victory over Aston Villa. That was Newcastle at their attacking best. And, there was so much enthusiasm and excitement of that kind of victory because we had the new players and everyone was really excited, and who knew what was going to happen. We had the Champions League on the horizon. This was a very, very different win today. It was a very different game, but I think it was equally, if not more, satisfying in some ways.
Yeah,
because it was kind of a return to the discipline and the aggressive team of 2022-23, where we really had to fight and grind out some of these wins. We upset a lot of people last season, notably Mikel Arteta. And actually, this game felt a bit to me like that game down at Arsenal, which was 0-0, where we really upset him. And it was a real rearguard defensive action, and we didn't have anyone sent off that game. But how good was it to see the return of that defensive solidity and the discipline and the effort level that went into that win this morning?
I think the season where we did finish fourth, I think the one thing that I think all of us agree on was just the defining characteristics of that team was just the togetherness and the team spirit. And that kind of got us over the line in a lot of games where, realistically it probably shouldn't. And, last night, this morning, probably was in that sort of category as well. One thing that I will say, though, is we mentioned a couple of times last season where's the shithousery gone? And it was back in full effect for that second half. And it was great to see that, just that little bit of gamesmanship and playing to get a win no matter what, or get a result no matter what. It wasn't sort of trying to win any friends. It wasn't trying to kind of please everybody above us or below us. It was just, look, we're the ones that need to do what we need to do for us, and screw everyone else. We're going to do whatever it takes. And they certainly did.
Yeah, there was definitely nothing pretty about it, but the record obviously changed the game completely. So we'll touch on that in a minute. But before we do that, the team selection was pretty much as expected. I think most of us would have picked that team. There was maybe a question over whether Trippier would start ahead of Livramento, and maybe at left back as well, because we've got Lloyd Kelly there now as well, who could have either played left back or left centre back, and Burn could have gone out to left back. But Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento have played most of pre-season. Do you think there was any significance in those team selections, or was it just a case of they've been doing quite well in pre-season? They're the fittest players we've got. They've obviously been bedded into the team now at the end of last season, and Tino played quite a lot last season. So do you think that was a case of just that the fittest, the most available, that they've been in the best form in pre-season?
Certainly at the back, I think it's probably the ones that have been there through all of preseason. I mean, Fabian Schar is going to like slot straight back in there, but like Tino, Hall, they've kind of been there through all of preseason. They've had a little bit more game time in preseason friendlies. It certainly seemed to be picking that sort of side. Just from the preseason games and how many minutes all of the different players got. Obviously, you've got Bruno and Gordon and Isak that come straight back in no matter what, because they are the linchpins of that team at the moment. Joelinton played probably the most minutes out of anyone in preseason, so obviously he was going to get the nod. But yeah, there was obviously like the Tino for Trippier was probably the most contentious issue leading up to it, but I'm actually quite pleased that we went with that, because Tino had a pretty shaky start to preseason. I think the first game that he had was he made a few little mistakes and seemed to get caught on the ball, but it did look in his defense. His defense was we seemed to be playing some weird formations and weird tactical sort of messing about with things just for Eddie Howe to see how we cope. But once we sort of reverted back to the tried and tested, he seemed to be pretty comfortable.
Yeah. And you looked at last summer's transfers, and there's been a lot said about that, and it didn't work out last season as we wanted them to. Obviously, Tonali had what happened with him. Barnes got that freak injury. Both fullbacks took a while. Certainly, Lewis Hall took a long time to get the trust of Eddie and get into the team. But if you look at those 4 signings now, they could really be, I think this season could really be when we see the benefit of that last summer transfer window, which there was a lot of criticism that we hadn't equipped a squad for the Champions League, and we had the freak injury situation obviously as well. But it wouldn't be a surprise at all at the end of this season to be looking at those 4 players and saying that was actually good business in the summer of 2023, even though it's taken a while to get there.
Well, I think that's always been something that we've been saying is let's judge this on the long-term approach. A lot of fans who were critical are probably looking at it in the what's it got for this season right here and right now. The club's not necessarily doing that. They're probably looking 2, 3, 4 seasons down the line and trying to make this bigger plan to give us some sustained success. And the likes of Tino and Hall, obviously they didn't get much of a run in last season. But I think it's been all the better for them to have that time to bed into the squad. They both look pretty comfortable now. And even by Hall's own admission, he wasn't sort of, the term Eddie Howe fit. He thought he was fit, but he wasn't Eddie Howe fit. And so, it's taken everyone a little bit of time to get up and running. I think Harvey Barnes is a fantastic signing. Obviously, we didn't really get to see a lot of any of the substitutions making an attacking impact yesterday. But look, I mean, it was always going to be a long-term approach from the owners. It was never going to be about like, look, well, we need to kind of address this particular thing right here and right now if it wasn't going to make sense in the long term. And I think those particular signings, as you said, it's taken a while for them to bed in. Obviously, nobody was going to predict what happened to Tonali, but you've got to think that 12 months of training with the team, he's going to come out firing with a point to prove. And the class of the kid is unquestioned. What I'd be quite happy to see, and it's a Pardewism, I guess you would say, but it's like they are all pretty much like new signings this year, and it's one of the things that while I think we're all getting a little bit frustrated, and we'll talk about the transfer situation in a minute, I'm sure, but it's one thing why I'm not super stressed, because when you look at the team that finished 4th, we've actually added quite a lot of depth to the squad since we finished 4th. And okay, yeah, we had like a horrendous injury run last season, but those players will now come into the side and provide that extra depth and extra competition and extra quality So we're actually still better off than when we finished 4th. So let's kind of wait and see what the rest of the window holds. But yeah, we'll discuss that, I'm sure.
Yeah, we definitely are, and this is what Eddie Howe said the other day. He was talking about the club has made progress, and that there was a few raised eyebrows at that because obviously we finished lower in the table, and it was quite a difficult season last season. But definitely off the pitch, the club's in a better position. On the pitch as well, with these players providing the depth. Lloyd Kelly's a replacement for Paul Dummett, who was not fit for purpose as a Premier League footballer last season. So. Yeah, absolutely. You've got Barnes, who's more or less the Matt Ritchie replacement as well from the squad, because Ritchie was there last season and Barnes wasn't. So it really is deeper than what it was beforehand. So it will be very interesting to see how they go. But it's good to see these young fullbacks getting starts and playing an important part in a win as well. The game itself, it was quite difficult. Even before the red card, we really struggled to get a foothold in this, and I think there's obviously some fitness issues going on with some of the players who came back from international duty. Gordon didn't look his usual sharp self, but it was it's difficult to judge them with what happened in the game. But I thought Bruno as well didn't quite look to begin with. He was giving it away a little bit, which is unlike him. And he obviously put in a monumental shift in the end, but Southampton had a lot of possession early doors, and they created a few sort of half chances. It wasn't a surprise that they were going to play this way, because anybody who's watched or who's read anything or listened to the season previews and everything, Southampton, this is what they do, and Russell Martin has got this philosophy of passing and retaining possession, which served them quite well in the Championship last season. It reminded me a bit of Burnley, though. Like, this is what Burnley did. They came up, they tried to play football, and they didn't have any cutting edge, and they got relegated very comfortably in the end. And I just wonder with Southampton, it kind of played out that way, obviously with their mistake passing it out from the back for our goal as well. But they looked quite tidy, didn't they, Mark, in those early stages? And they might cause a few teams a few problems, and it was a bit disconcerting to see us concede so much possession in the first home game of the season.
Yeah, but we went through this last season with Brighton as well, and they were the best thing since sliced bread because they played possession football. But having all the possession in the world doesn't mean anything unless you actually do anything with it. And so, as much as Southampton dominated possession in the second half, as you expect, they did to a certain degree in the first half, but didn't really create a lot either. They didn't create any real clear-cut chances. So, look, I mean, we were sloppy. I'm not going to deny. I do agree with you that a few of our players seem to be lacking that Premier League pace, getting up to speed and being aware that the game's going to be at a slightly higher pace level than what they've maybe been playing in the summer. Obviously, South American football may not be quite the speed merchants that the Premier League does have. So you've got to think that it's going to take them a little bit of time to kind of get back up and running in that kind of frame of mind. But I don't think we're the only ones. I think Ten Hag basically turned around and admitted that we're not ready for the season yet. We've had too many people come back too late and then not played enough preseason. So it isn't just us. It is something that when you've got internationals and there's international players and there's a big international tournament on, they're coming back late. They don't have the fitness. They don't have the match sharpness yet. They haven't really played as many minutes in the preseason games as you would like. So it's not unexpected. And I imagine that they will be working quite hard during the week to try and get that little bit of sharpness back in their game. Look, fair play to Southampton for the way they were playing. It's always nice to have these footballing philosophies, a way to play and like a style that you want to adhere to. Unfortunately, if you don't have the quality to do that in the Premier League that you used to be able to do comfortably in the Championship, then there's only one way you're going, and that's back to the Championship.
Yeah, I feel like if you get an Alex McCarthy, who has been a decent keeper in his time, but if you're asking him to pass it out from the back when you've got Gordon closing him down and Alex Isak is a few meters away, it's a bit risky, really. Like you're going to be, you will probably be punished if you're going to do that at this level. And maybe it's brave to be doing that and sticking to the philosophy, but I do think that they got the better of us tactically though in those early stages. But I felt like probably we were going to settle down a bit eventually, and we if the red card hadn't happened, who knows what would have happened. I think we would have got better, definitely. We would have had to get better, and we would have started showing a bit more. But the red card did happen. Let's talk about that. But before we do that, I just want to talk about VAR a little bit, because there's a new directive, or there's some new sort of guidelines around VAR. I'm not going to read all of these out. Henry Winter tweeted this the other day. The important bits, though, which I think are worth bearing in mind, it's talking about maintaining a high threshold for intervention. So it's minimum interference for maximum benefit. And the referees call a bit like the umpires calling cricket will stand unless it's a clear and obvious error. This is interesting because I think that they moved away from clear and obvious last season. Or I don't know if they did officially, but certainly they seemed to move away from that, because they were re-refereeing everything and doing everything. This talks about reducing delays, so semi-automated offside technology, improving the fan experience with announcing decisions in the stadium. I don't know if that actually happened. I don't think it did. Replays to be shown on the screen, improve VAR training and consistency, emphasis on the speed of the process, improve the transparency and communication with the new Twitter account PL Match Center, which I was following with interest overnight as well, to help the understanding of decisions, it's given the facts about what's happened, which basically just seems to describe exactly what happened, which everyone knows anyway. It doesn't sort of explain it in any way. So that's the kind of context of VAR. We'll talk about the red card in this game. Southampton had been targeting. I think it's fair to say that they were coming at. They kicked Bruno about 3 or 4 times. They'd fouled him quite a few times. Lewis Hall had already been booked really early for a pullback on their right back who was making his debut. He was playing well. He was having a good game, but there was some frustration starting to build anyway, I think, with the way the referee was managing the game, and he wasn't he didn't seem to be clamping down too much on what Southampton were doing, which seemed to be a very clear and obvious tactic, which is fine. It's fair enough. We've done it before, it's a legitimate tactic to use to spoil, especially in an away game against strong opposition. So what happened was Bruno got kicked again. He won a free kick, and then there was a big push and shove sort of thing going on between Ben Brereton-Diaz and Fabian Schar, who then headbutted him, if you can call him that. I don't think he did headbutt him, but anyway, he was sent off for violent conduct. VAR backed the referee's decision, and then that was that. We were down to 10 men on 28 minutes. I'll hand over to you, Mark, just to give your thoughts on this decision, and what you sort of made of how it played out and what went on.
I will start off by saying Fabian Schar was silly. He's and I think everyone's in agreement that he's given the referee a decision to make by his reaction. So yeah, it's a bit stupid on his behalf to make it an incident and give that option for the ref. However, the whole thing was just an absolute joke, and you've got the ref who hasn't clamped down on anything, as you said, up until that point. Every time Newcastle was trying to break, they were getting pulled back. They were getting late tackles. Southampton was leaving the foot in, so to speak. Being that sort of like, a dirty side, I guess you would say. It's that niggly fouls, that constant kind of like just leaving one in on the player to let them know that you're around and make them think twice about, and it doesn't help that, as we've already mentioned, that the players weren't quite up to speed as well. So they maybe were dwelling on the ball a little bit more than they should have been, and leaving that opportunity for Southampton to kind of get that little bit of a dig in at them. The ref let it all go, though, and you could see the players were starting to get more and more frustrated. And I think it all boiled over when Bruno got fouled again. It was quite a hard foul, but then the ball spills out, the whistle's already gone, and Brereton-Diaz literally forearm smashes Fabian Schar in the back of the head while Schar's going back to his goal. And I think that's probably what sparked it off. It wasn't just like, it was like, oh, a little bit of a coming together or anything like that. He literally just went up and barged him in the back of the head. And Schar's gone up, and rightly so, was a little bit aggravated by that. And he's gone up to try and sort of front up to him, pushed him out the way, and then they've come together. We've seen on social media today that, you know, that there's been footage where it clearly shows Brereton-Diaz. He moves his head towards Schar every bit as much as Schar does to go to him. And then Brereton-Diaz falls on the ground like he's been shot by a sniper. And the ref literally has pretty much no choice on that evidence alone to send Schar off. However, one thing was apparently Brereton-Diaz then had a yellow card and Schar had his red card. My understanding, and I wonder if this is what played into it, was they only checked Fabian Schar's incident. They've only really had a look on, right, well, he's gone up to him and he's made contact, so therefore we can't overrule it. But they've not really looked at Brereton-Diaz because it was deemed a yellow card incident, which VAR is not meant to get involved in. So I wonder if that's complicated things a little bit. But again, like, we've got no idea. All of those points that Henry Winters listed out, I think all of the fans were crying out for last season. And from what we're seeing in the first week of the competition, none of them seem to be getting implemented as expected. You know, I don't think anyone was really made aware of what the decision was. There's certainly no communications. We don't hear what VAR is saying. And I think that's what's really pissing all the fans off more than anything, is that it's that inconsistency. And we've got the first weekend of football in the new season, and we're already talking about VAR and refereeing decisions. And it's not just us. You know, you look at the Everton game, you look at some of the other games that have gone on. I think Paddy Power was taking the piss at one point about, you know, it's like a little gentle nudging of foreheads together and it's a red card, yet somebody was like strangling an Aston Villa player on the ground and it was just like, no, play on. So, you know, it's one thing like to get an incident occasionally wrong. It's another that straight out the bat within the first weekend of football, we've got sort of 3 or 4 matches with talking point incidents about VAR, and it's seemingly not getting any better. And it's that lack of consistency that is annoying fans and managers alike, because it's okay for one game, but it's not in another, or it's okay for one player. And I will point out to one of the tweets that I sent out early doors this morning was the challenge on Gordon later on in the game. And it was a 2-footed, like, lunging, flying in the air tackle, completely out of control. And I said, it's like, look, I've got a freeze frame of the Optasport transmission on the TV, and you know, I've seen plenty of people sent off for those sorts of incidents. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. It's not just the contact; it's the intention, it's the control or lack thereof in this case that usually results in a red card. And it's that inconsistency. So you're left like kind of going, well, that at least evens it up, and now we can get back on with a proper game of football. And for me, one of the big talking points of trying to push the Premier League, trying to improve the product, is making it a better spectacle. And once again, first weekend of the season, we've had 2 red cards in 2 games. The Everton game had player sent off as well. And you've basically got, well, you're ruining this aspect of the game for the overseas fans who are getting to watch this time and time again, because that second half was absolutely diabolical to watch. And you know, even as a Southampton fan, you kind of been enjoying watching that, just like, you know, pummeling forward at every opportunity, but not really getting anywhere because Newcastle was like playing like 10 men behind the ball.
The Everton game was hilarious because the referee made a penalty decision, which looked like it was a penalty in first place. The replay showed that Calvert-Lewin had stood on the defender's foot, actually, so it wasn't a penalty. But they sent the ref to the monitor to have a look at it. The monitor didn't show anything; it just had the VAR badge on there for 30 seconds, and then the ref changed his mind. So it's like, you watch the Euros, and there's no VAR controversies. In fact, there was 1 or 2, and they were involving English officials. So English football is not getting this right at all compared to what's going on elsewhere. And I don't know if they're just overthinking it, that they're overcomplicating it. I don't know, but it's a bit of a mess anyway. But
just incompetence.
I think with this one, you talk about the letter of the law. What Fabian Schar did is violent conduct according to the letter of the law. I've got a problem with that because that wasn't violent conduct. That was two people squaring up at each other, having a bit of handbags. Like, yellow cards, fine, get on with the game. Like there's no need to. But the referee, it wasn't rescinded because it was a red card according to the current rules, because he touched his head onto Brereton-Diaz's head, or Brereton-Diaz touched onto Shar's head.
Yeah.
If Fabian Schar,
I think
if Fabian Schar had fallen down, if it was the other way around and Schar had fallen down, Brereton-Diaz would have been sent off. So, it's just it just shows that it was a very very, very soft red card, I think. And even if it was technically correct, I think they need to look at the laws and sort that out a bit. It was just it was a shame as well for the game, because, like you said, it just resulted in us. We actually went and scored not long after it, but it just ended up in us sitting back and defending, and it wasn't much of a spectacle for neutrals. Not that we particularly care about that.
No.
But yeah, it was a red card. Off he goes. What it did do, though, was really fire everyone up. So the crowd, and Eddie referenced this, the crowd got into the game, and there's nothing in football like an angry injustice at St James's Park where the fans feel like we've been screwed over. The player on the receiving end just ends up getting abused, dog's abuse, for the rest of the game, which can't be nice for them. I don't know whether it affected him, but he was sort of Longstaff piled into him not long after.
That was a great tackle.
He was having a smile about that, Brereton-Diaz, but it can't be nice to have 50,000 angry Geordies screaming at you every time you touch the ball. It was a bit like the Arsenal game last season, where Havertz flew into that tackle and then didn't get sent off, and then everyone got so up for it after that, and it was just it turned into an absolute bear pit, So actually, that probably worked. It probably worked in our favor in a weird way, because it made the job quite simple. We weren't going to attack, really. We were just going to sit back, let them have the ball. And we did go and score a goal, though. Like we touched on before, it was just a mistake from Southampton, which you can't do at Premier League level.
No.
Joelinton finished it really nicely from Isak's pass, and then it was half time. But what we thought at half time, it was such a strange last 15, 20 minutes of that half, where you were thinking, we're playing this promoted team at home. We really should be winning this. We haven't played well. We've had someone sent off, but we've scored a goal. It was a very strange kind of feeling, wasn't it, at half time?
I think my thoughts at the time were literally, there's never an easy game with Newcastle. Like, what I wouldn't give for just a comfortable game where it's nice football to watch and we're comfortably winning the game. We're not like, I don't need the Tottenham game every week. I don't need the Aston Villa games from last season. Just comfortable football to watch, so you can kind of chill out at midnight and just settle in and enjoy the match, rather than this like nail biting edge of your seat kind of like sort of crap that we have to put up with week in, week out. There's never an easy game with Newcastle, so we should be used to it by now. It was weird, though, because, as you said, it's like we've got this situation where we've scored a goal, but we're a man down, and like, how do we go about this now? Because do we just defend that and hold on, or do we try and break on the counter attack? I felt that we weren't playing well enough to really be at Southampton with 10 men. So I felt that it was going to be a pretty sticky second half, but not quite as bad as it turned out to be.
Well, it's a good job Southampton not better than what they are in terms of quality, because they were good in the first half, and I thought Kyle Walker-Peters in particular, who was playing left wing back, but he was popping up everywhere. He was all over the place, and then for some reason they switched him in the second half, and they made a few subs, which I don't actually think helped them either. It sort of stunted them a bit, and they brought a couple of kids on, but they had a lot of possession. They didn't have many chances. They had Armstrong had a shot that was saved by Pope, and then Armstrong had the one off the line from Lewis Hall, which was a really, really good goal line clearance.
That's not getting anywhere near the attention it should, by the way.
Yeah, it was brilliant bit of defensive play from Lewis Hall. Other than that, they had 2 tame headers at Pope, which he saved comfortably, one at the very end and one just before the end as well. But it was such a rearguard action. We brought Murphy off as soon as Schar got sent off, and we went into a 4-3-2. So we still had Gordon and Isak, and then Barnes when he came on, and Isak up front. So we did have an outlet, but we couldn't get the ball to them at all. Isak probably had about 3 touches in the whole game. Gordon couldn't get the ball, and the 3 midfielders, Joelinton and Bruno and Longstaff, they just ran and covered every blade of grass.
Yeah.
The defenders jumped in front of everything. They blocked everything. It was a proper old school rearguard defensive action. If it was a better team than Southampton, I don't think we would have survived because they would have had the quality to break us down. But what a gutsy, brave, courageous performance, particularly by players who, like Bruno, who he's not at his peak fitness, far from it.
Yeah.
Joelinton is back to beast mode. He's absolutely monstrous. Yeah. And Longstaff put in such a shift, and that's probably the kind of game that suits him quite well as well. Yeah. But some key performances, I've touched on a few players there. I'll just hand over. You can talk about Joelinton if you want. We don't need to do a man of the match because I think it's obviously is Joelinton. He was just absolutely
pretty
brilliant.
Much. He was just everywhere, wasn't he? I don't think there was a blade of grass that he didn't cover. He flew into tackles. He won the ball back. He sort of like buffeted players off him, trying to sort of hold on to possession. He was, as you said, proper beast mode, and I don't think it gets any better for him than that sort of game. I think he relishes that. I mean, when he scored, you could see the emotion that he had. I think, and it was just the as you said, the injustice, and then he scores a goal, and he's just like he's just loving every minute of playing for the club and playing for the fans, and you want to see more of that. I think for me, obviously, I think everybody needs an absolute massive round of applause for the effort that they put in. I'm not so sure about it being if there was a better side, because as you said, we've done it against the likes of Arsenal and stuff last season. We've got, once we get that mentality that like it's us against the world kind of thing going on, we don't seem to back down very easily. We don't seem to give a lot away. So I'll probably. One of the things that I really want to point out, though, is the likes of Gordon and Isak, who shouldn't be all about having to track back, shouldn't be about having to press the opponent all the time and do the defensive duties. They should be there to try and score goals, to try and give an attacking threat. And I think both of them just did so well once we went down to 10 men. There was no sense of Isak going in the huff because he wasn't getting any service and what's the point in this? Like everyone to a man was just focused on giving everything for that win. And you could see afterwards, and it's like the team photo, and you've got all the injured players that aren't even playing, that aren't even training at the moment, Botman and Wilson, and they're all there in the training in the dressing room, involved still, and it's that team mentality, and it's like it is that us against the world, and every single player is kind of bought into that, and I just love it. I love it as a fan, and I think you should probably love it just as a general football fan in general.
That's why I think the comparisons with Villa game are really interesting, because obviously that was a big win, lots of goals. This was a very, very different ground out victory, but there's nothing like this kind of game to bring everyone together even more, and to really give everyone that feeling, that siege mentality, which we had in 2 seasons ago, which we didn't have as much last season when we were struggling. Eddie Howe singled out Emil Kraft as well, who came on out of position, threw himself in front of everything. This kind of game probably suited Dan Burn. They had 12 corners, I think it was. He was heading them all away. Joelinton was back there heading the ball away. It was just... There was 11 blocks from shots, so they only had 4 shots on target, I think it was, and there was 11 blocks as well. Nick Pope being back in goal as well. Yeah, you just feel so much more confident and comfortable with him there, compared to Dubravka. And a couple of those headers, and they were fairly straightforward for Pope. And the one from Armstrong's shot was really good. He's just got that massive paw that he just gets to the ball.
Yeah.
And he makes such a difference. It was a bit worrying when he seemed to pull his something when he was doing the goal kick. And I was thinking we are in trouble if he gets injured, because there's the drop off in quality from him to Dubravka and probably to Vlak as well is massive. We don't want to be going through that again.
I don't think it's even just a measure of the quality of Pope, but I think it's the reassurance it gives to the defenders in front of him. Like, they just seem so much more comfortable with what they need to do, knowing that Pope's there just to clean up if he needs to, or just to like give that match-winning save, not to kind of make any like massive howlers. And obviously we've seen Nick Pope do some weird stuff as well, but he's always seems to just have that calming influence on the defenders. And I think there's as you said, it's worrying if he goes down, because I'm not sure how we do without him in goal.
Not very well, if last season's anything to go by. So, but yeah, we managed to see the game out, and what a win! Like, the relief at the end. And football, you don't think you're going to be sitting there after beating a promoted team in the first game of the season, which you expect to win anyway, feeling so relieved and so joyful and so happy about it. But the way that it went, I feel like I've got a bit of catharsis from that Liverpool game last season, which I think about at least 3 times every day for the last 12 months, pretty much. Where they were down to 10 men and we fucked it up and threw it away at the end. We were down to 10 men this time and we won, and that's massive. Like, I don't think you can overestimate how important this could be for the season moving forward to get that confidence from that. And we know that we'll have other games this season where we'll be a lot more fluent, and we'll have other games where we play a lot better and don't win as well. So what a good way to start the season with a win like that. We only had 4 1-0 wins last season. We had Brentford, Arsenal, Man United, and Fulham away as well. And we only kept 9 clean sheets in the league last season as well. So to have one on the board already, and to have really ground out a win like that, I think it sets the season up in a really good way. And I know it's strange because it was a really difficult, challenging game. But what do you think this means for the season moving forward and looking ahead from this point?
I'm hoping that it's a return to that defensively solid mindset that we had in the fourth place finish season. As you said, we were not very good defensively last season. We conceded an awful lot of goals comparative to the season before, where we had the joint best defense in the league. So yeah, if we can get back to some resemblance of a solid defensive unit, defending as a team, then we've got the quality. We know we've got the quality going forward to cause teams problems. So you're hoping that just being able to see that game out, get that clean sheet, get that first 3 points on the board, where it wasn't just, everything's going right for us. The mindset will be totally different for the players, going, well, we didn't play well and we know we can play better, so let's get at this, and it'll give them a really good sense of belief, I think, that that when things aren't going their way, they've found a way to get those results that they need, and hopefully that sort of like kicks them on a bit. It could be massive. Look, that's 3 points that we definitely shouldn't have had. I think it's safe to say. So yeah, look, let's see how it goes for them, but hopefully it's that mindset's kicked in for them now.
And on the other side of things, if you've played a promoted team at home and you haven't won in the first game, that's a real problem. Last season we drew with Luton, Sheffield United and Burnley, we beat them, but we lost to Forest. Like some of the other teams down there had really difficult games against Bournemouth as well. So it would have been a big problem, I think. Just the optics of not beating a promoted team, regardless of what happened in the game, would have been an issue, I think. So I'll just chuck some stats up. This is probably the lowest possession we'll have all season as well. It was 22.2%. Obviously heavily skewed by the red card, which means you can't really analyze the game in any sort of logical way, because it threw everything out for over an hour of the game. All you can really say is that we showed such grit and determination to actually win the game from that point. But like we said, they only had 4 shots on target. 4 shots off target, 11 blocked shots. That was our players totally just throwing themselves in the way of everything. Nick Pope only had 3 saves to make. The good one from Armstrong, and then there's 2 routine saves from the headers. 12 corners, which they didn't really do much with. We had 3 corners, which we didn't do anything with. And they had more fouls than us as well. It was bitty, and I think it was, like we said before, it was a strategy of theirs to sort of go in hard, and that's fine. I'm not going to complain about that. But the referee should be aware of that and take that into account when he's refereeing the game in the early stages, because I think he didn't really have control of it, and they were getting away with quite a lot, which meant that the game did sort of get into that kind of difficult situation. He made it harder for himself, the referee, I think, by doing that. But what do you think about this? There's an idea that, and I've seen a few people have said that Eddie Howe wants to move towards more of a possession-based kind of style of football. Maybe Sandro Tonali is going to help with that, but it's interesting, isn't it? You come up against teams like Southampton who have got far less quality, but they've got this really defined way of playing football, which is to keep the ball, pass. That's what they do. There's other teams in the league like that as well. We don't play that way. We sometimes have around 50% possession, but we never really dominate the ball, and we've got different strengths. What do you think about the moving forward for us? Is that a way you think we want to go? Because that's the way some managers feel like they get control over a game, is to control the ball, and then that they can win games from there and create chances. But it wouldn't really suit our squad that we've got at the moment, I don't think, and it would be a complete shift from what we do.
I think the worrying thing for any kind of shift in the way we play is we don't have the quality in terms of being able to unlock defenses if they're sitting deep, and it's something that we spoke ad nauseum about last season, where if a team was sitting deep and soaking up pressure, we seem to kind of run out of ideas. We're very much more about soaking up pressure ourselves and being absolutely lethal on the counterattack. Now, I do wonder if that the mindset to try and shift to a more possession-based game is more driven by more games in Europe, and having his eyes sort of opened a little bit to the rigors of what we hope to have on a regular basis as a club. That players are just not going to be able to play the style of football that we play week in, week out if we're also traveling and playing in Europe. And having that more possession-based game puts the emphasis on controlling the game rather than chasing the game. And so you're not expending as much energy. You're making the opposition run around to close you down. And it's the whole coaching mentality of you can always pass it faster than you can run. And so you pass the ball around, you wear the opposition out, and then you eventually wait for that chance to come. It makes sense to do that, but as you said, I don't think we've got the squad to be able to do that right now. And it may change with Tonali and Bruno having like that double pivot that we discussed at the beginning of last season. Time will tell, I guess, on that one. But for me, we've got pace to burn going forward. We've got so much energy from midfield bombing forward. It seems to be fully set up for a counter-attacking style of football, and pressing the opposition to win the ball higher up the pitch. I just don't see where we're getting the goals and where we're getting the attacking threat from if we're trying to play a possession-based game in midfield.
I find it boring to watch as well, to be fair. I know that Pep has changed football, so that's the way he exerts control and dominance, is by keeping the ball and passing it. And his Barcelona team did that, albeit they had Messi there as well for the flair. But it's just, I find it much more exciting and interesting to watch Klopp's Liverpool team, for example, where it's kind of blood and thunder, quick, pressing high, counter pressing. I find that much more exciting and interesting. And there's nothing like when we just blitz teams. It happened quite a lot last season where we scored a goal and then within 5 minutes we scored another goal. It's just like absolute intensity and dominance in that way. And I think that's more suited to Newcastle, I think, as a club and as a fan base. I think that we'd get bored if we were playing tiki-taka, even if we were controlling
I think the difference is that you can build your side around being that counter-attacking side, that high tempo football, attacking threats and counter-attacking football. I think there will be games where it will definitely be more beneficial if you have that in your locker to keep more possession. If you're not on top of the game, for example, if you aren't in control, then it is kind of nice to go, well, look, hang on, we can soak up a bit of pressure by just playing the ball around for a bit. But as you said, yeah, I don't want to watch that week in, week out because it'll be bored shitless.
The Leicester fans were interested last season with Maresca. They won the league and they were dominating it for a long period, but they didn't like it. They were bored a lot of the time. So anyway, we'll see what happens. And yeah, it's definitely right what you said, though. Some games we are going to need to be in control. This was not a game where we ever had any measure of control, but it didn't matter. We got the 3 points.
Yep.
What we do have as well, though, now is a gap in the defence, because I don't think we're even going to bother trying to appeal this red card for Fabian Schar. I don't think it would be successful. So he's going to be banned for 3 games now, which will be, if it's domestic, it will be Bournemouth away, Forest away in the Cup, and then Spurs at home. We've been trying to buy Marc Guehi for the last 2 weeks. The way that this has played out in public has been so frustrating. Steve Parish was on the radio again this morning, or tonight for us. He was on TalkSport talking about it again. It's quite apparent that these leaks have not come from Newcastle now. Initially, I wondered whether we might have done this to try and put some pressure on Crystal Palace, but the last leak came out just before Eddie's press conference, like 5 minutes before. So that was quite clear that it's not coming from our side.
Yeah.
Parish has been on Sky. He's been on the BBC. Now he's on TalkSport talking about it. So, they've got the valuation for that player. Fine. Mark Douglas made a really good point that, if you spoke to Newcastle's team negotiators about this, they would probably have a different perspective about these 4 bids that have been rejected. Every time there's a bid goes in, Crystal Palace tell the media, and then they report it as rejected bids. So whether they're trying to get smoke out of the clubs or get a bid and more going, they're just trying to get the best deal they can for their player. That's fair enough. But they still seem open to selling him from what Parish is saying. And it's a lot of money for somebody who's got 2 years left on his contract. If reported to be believed, we've offered 65 million. I think now we've offered 60 million up front and 5 million in add-ons. They seem to want 65 million guaranteed with another 5 million, which would take to 70 million, which is a massive amount of money. He's a good player. I think we're looking at Marc Guehi as a potential captain for the next decade, So that's why I think we're going so hard for him. He's a really good player, obviously. Whether he's Van Dijk level, who cost that much, albeit 5 years ago, whatever it was, probably not. And whether he'll ever get to that level, who knows? But, the market's gone crazy since then. What do you think now? Do you hope that we'll kind of go back in and get this sorted? Because we definitely need something before the next game, which we've got coming in 7 days' time now for us.
Yeah, look, I think the Schar red card's definitely thrown a spanner in the works, and it's weakened our hand, so to speak. I think if we go back in now, we don't have a huge negotiating pool of like, oh, well, if we miss out, we miss out. It's like, well, Palace are going to know we're desperate now if we do go back in. Realistically, I will hold my hands up and say I am never going to question clubs. I'm not going to do a whole Man United thing of, well, how dare they quote us that amount for that player? We want him, so we should get him for what we want to pay. No, it's the selling club's prerogative. They can ask whatever they deem is a suitable value for them. I think this is probably complicated a little bit by the sell-on clause back to Chelsea as well. So I think they're looking to get 50 million or whatever for Guehi, which means that they're wanting that extra amount because the rest of it's going to go to Chelsea and it's not going to go to Palace. And I think that's why it's potentially gone up a little bit more than what I consider to be a fair fee for him. I think it's very inflated at the moment on the back of the Euros. The English tax is always a thing, we know that, but on the back of reaching a European championship final, like a Euros final, obviously that's tacked another few million on his a valuation. If they're going to go back in for him, just go back in, offer what Palace want. If Palace have said this is what we want, just go back in and get him, get it done, get him in. I think if they go back in and start trying to renegotiate, if they start trying to get too clever with it, it's going to drag on, and that's just not going to be any good for anyone. I don't know if he's worth it. I don't know if he's worth that much money, but time will tell on that one. I don't think we thought Anthony Gordon was worth what we paid for him, but we couldn't be more wrong on that one. So I'd be worried paying that amount of money for a centre half that you're not sure is going to be absolutely world class, because you're looking at that, it's kind of that Man United buying Maguire kind of level, just because he had a decent tournament for England and has never really set the world on fire. He's been solid, but he's not been that kind of like next level world class defender where that's what you would be expecting for that amount of money, even in today's market. As you said, like it's a Van Dijk kind of level where that's your top center half for the next 10 years, and you're going to basically build your side around them. For me, if you can, we paid what, 30 odd million for Botman. Is Guehi that much better than Botman? And that, to me, I think is one of the big questions.
It's this thing about risk, isn't it? When you're buying players from the Premier League, and we know that Eddie Howe, we don't know actually, but we assume based on the actions he's taken and things he's done that he likes players with Premier League experience, and you can understand why managers like that, because it's a pretty sure bet that they're going to be good. You know what you're getting at Premier League level. Like West Ham have bought Todibo from Nice, and there's been other centre halves that have come in for about half of the price that we're looking at Guehi for. Malik Thior we were linked with heavily about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I saw a funny tweet about him from the AC Milan fans. They're not happy with him at the moment. I don't know about European centre halves, and I'm not going to sit there and pretend I know about this, but we know that the club will have other targets and that they'll have other people that they're looking at. But I think it's the combination of the risk-free nature of buying from the Premier League. Guehi's had 2 good seasons at Palace. There's the extra money from the Euros performances, as you've said. And I think his character, he's got a really good character. He's a captain at Crystal Palace now, or he's the vice captain or something. And I think we know that Eddie Howe places a lot of value on personality and character and fit. And I think they see him as someone who will be able to come straight into the leadership group. And we've had, I know Bruno's gone into it now, but we've had Richie and Dummett have both left. So there's kind of space in there for more leaders. And I think he would fit the bill there. So I think that's why they're happy to put a premium on him. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But there'll have to come a point where we just say, we just can't afford that much money. We still need a right winger as well. We do. Like, I think, and I don't know if spending all of this money on one player means that we won't get a right winger. Maybe we might get someone on a loan with an obligation or an option. That might be possible. We've got outgoings to do as well. Like, it's expected that we'll be selling a couple of players, but the market's been quite slow, hasn't it? All summer, really. It's taken a while to kind of get going. And even now, it still seems a bit still. I don't know if it's PSR causing...
I think the PSR is just a large, dark cloud hanging over a lot of clubs at the moment. And I think the sort of points deductions that they handed out was like a big kick up the arse that, hang on, they're actually going to follow this up, and it's not just talk and blowing smoke up our asses. They're actually going to do something about it. Excuse me. So yeah, if they... it is that weird thing where the Premier League, to try and kind of keep the top club, and I know we're kind of completely biased because we want our owners to go, hey, we're going to spend money and we're going to buy whoever we want and we're going to like challenge the top teams straight off the bat. But we're kind of looking at it as that they've stomped on this to try and stop that from us. But at the same time, like, you've got to be concerned that the Premier League's now hurting its own brand by making these boring transfer windows that not a lot's happening apart from Chelsea kind of money laundering with players nowadays.
Well, and Newcastle and Forest and Everton and Villa swapping academy products between them. Like, 20 million for that Greek goalkeeper. That's absolutely that's just absurd. That's and I know it's because Elliot Anderson went the other way, and that values Anderson at 15 million then, which is probably undervalued for him. Like if these figures are correct anyway, but like the Premier League can't. They need to, and they are going to change it. It's in the pipeline, but whatever they do, because this is obviously not fit for purpose at the moment. But I think that's partly why the market has been slow. But there's about 2 weeks to go now of the window, so it's good for us that we know there is money available and that we've got that money to spend. I still completely trust the club that that they know what they're doing, and I think we'll get the right outcome. And if we do get that centre half and a right winger, we'll have some squad. Like I think that, like we said before about the depth already in the squad from last summer's signings, we're going to have a really strong squad if we can keep the key players fit. So I think we'll leave it there. That was it was a really, really good win for us, and it's nice to be back with 3 points. We'll be previewing the Bournemouth game later this week, and if anything else happens with transfers, I'm sure we'll be hopping on to talk about that. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for joining.
Good 3 points in the bag, and we'll move on to the next one.
And we'll speak to everyone soon. Cheers.
Take it easy.